and taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste. We're live at Green Building Supply. That means you can clap right now, so that's great. And we're here every first Tuesday of the month. I'm Steve Bosch, your host, for 60 minutes of what we hope is going to be delicious food and fun and lots of information. And these are all my guests for this show. Malak Nour is right here. She is going to do 2 different gluten-free tarts, one savory, one sweet. Ariella Severin, we happen to be related. She's my granddaughter. She's going to be cooking her very famous tofu dish. And this is this is Francis Thicke, who is the owner with his wife of Radiance Dairy, and we're going to be learning a little bit about what's going on at the dairy these days, the dairy industry in the United States, and probably some other things we're going to be talking about. So that's what we have in store for you. And so I'm looking forward to talking to all of you, but I think we're going to get started by talking with Malak and having her show us how to make this savory tart and a different sweet tart, 2 different crusts, right? Basically, we're going to
make one. It's the same process for both, so we'll do one together, and I'll talk you through how to make the other one, which is same process, just slightly different ingredients.
I hope I understand. That'll be really great. So how about we'll ask you to come back a little bit later. Don't go too far, if you don't mind, all right? Yeah, don't go milk any cows or anything like that. So, all right, so let's get started right now with Malak talking a little bit about these gluten-free tarts, and I really want to make sure that everybody knows that Malak has developed her own gluten-free all-purpose flour. Those of you who are familiar with gluten-free baking know that it's actually it can be a little tricky, and also there are a lot of different ingredients that many people put in their gluten-free flours. Some of them, better, some of them maybe not as good. And Malak spent quite a long time researching and putting together all the different tests and just baking until she got it right. And I know she drove people crazy while she was doing it. I have heard those stories. And so Breadtopia actually markets her gluten-free all-purpose flour. I don't think it has your name on it. So I want to make sure everybody knows it's Malak Nour's gluten-free flour, that if you buy that all-purpose flour from Breadtopia, that's hers. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. It was fun. It was intense and it was really fun.
Yeah. All right. So tell us a little bit about this. By the way, you're going to see this tart, this savory tart that she's made. And I have to tell you that I got a chance to actually eat some of this tart a couple of weeks ago, and I literally could have eaten the whole thing. It was so absolutely delicious. So I guess that's not going to be able to happen tonight because other people are probably going to want to have some. So, all right.
All right. So as we're moving into the season, the holiday season, I really wanted to demystify the concept of pastry crust being something best left to professionals. So pastry crust, I think, is one of the very easiest things to make. It's very quick to make. You'll see. Don't just trust me. You'll see what the process is. And this tart is something that you can serve as an appetizer. You can serve it as a main dish with a salad next to it. It makes use of the herbs in the garden, and I brought a bunch of herbs from mine. It's going crazy right now, and it's the last of the herbs, so we're going to enjoy that. All right, so without further ado, we're going to get started. If you would like to see the recipe, the link is up at the breadtopia.com website. Look for the gluten-free herb and goat cheese tart. So we're going to start first with the flour. I'm going to use a food processor because I'm a super lazy cook, as you may have heard me say before. And we're going to start with the flour. Straight into the food processor.
Can you tell us a little bit about what makes your gluten-free mixture, we'll say, unique?
So what I was setting out to do was create a flour that I could use one-to-one in all of my recipes in substitution for a white all-purpose flour. And the only thing this will not make is bread, but it will make any short pastry. And it required a lot of work. I couldn't use anything like coconut flour because that has its own oil in it. So right now I'm adding 2 tablespoons of Parmesan. If you have time to grate your own, do it, because it's awesome, but we'll take it easy today. So we have our flour, Parmesan. We're going to grate some black pepper in there. So the flour essentially was to be used in a straight substitution, one-to-one, and it's a combination of brown rice flour, sorghum flour, tapioca flour, potato starch, and it has a touch of xanthan gum to bind it all together. But essentially it does not have its own flavor, so you're not adding any flavoring to whatever you're making, and that's why I can use it one-to-one. All right, so that's our pepper, and lastly we're going to put a little 1/4 teaspoon of salt.
If you tell me, I can repeat it because we don't hear it. The binder is xanthan gum.
And it's just a little touch of it.
And the thing about making it one-to-one, it just makes it so easy for anybody to adapt any recipe. So if you have a cookbook and you want to bake some biscuits and you want to do them gluten-free, you don't have to worry at all about, oh gosh, how much of the gluten-free flour do I use in relation to all-purpose flour, that kind of thing. It's just really simple. And that's it's actually one of the great things about what you did, because it just makes it so much more accessible to the home baker who needs to do that for whatever reason.
Right, which was me. I just needed to be able to use all my recipes. Okay, so we're going to pulse the flour. Now we're going to drop the butter in. We have a stick of butter that we cut into roughly a tablespoon size chunk. We're dropping the butter in now.
And is that butter hard, cold? What's
It's cold. It's cold butter. You do need the butter to be cold. And then once we have it going, you see it's kind of getting this coarse meal quality to it. It's kind of got this crumbly thing going. You guys all see that? So now we're good, and we're going to add...
Gonna add how many eggs? What do you need? I can help you. Oh, you've got it.
Couldn't find my fork there. I'm just going to lightly beat an egg, and I'm going to drizzle that in with the food processor running, and watch what happens now. And it forms a ball. So once it's formed a ball, we are good to go. We've got our pastry crust, and I think that was pretty simple, right?
That was really simple. Yeah, that was like amazing. By the way, those of you who were here at the beginning of the show, if you tried the beans, those are Rio Zappe beans. It's an heirloom bean. It's it's actually a lot like a pinto, but it has more flavor than a pinto. And comes from Rancho Gordo. I suggest if you love beans, you check out the Rancho Gordo website, because the guy Steve Sancho, who owns Rancho Gordo, he's really been the most outstanding person in this country to revive not only the knowledge of heirloom beans, but also actually perpetuate the growing of heirloom beans, not only here, but with growers in Mexico, and just fantastic. If you like beans, I really suggest you take a look at that, because there's not anything like eating those kind of beans.
Were those canned?
Those are canned. Did you just say that, John? Were those canned? Okay, I'm going to ignore that at this moment, and then you and I will have a talk afterwards. So be sure to stick around, because no, they were not canned, John. Those were not canned. Those were cooked. Those were cooked, and they have a little bit. I really wanted you to get the taste of the bean itself. I wasn't trying to make some statement about other ingredients or anything. It has a little bit of green chipotle and amarillo powdered chili in it, but just a little tiny bit, and some salt, and that's all that's in there, and olive oil.
Okay, so back to the pastry crust. We took that ball, we put it between two sheets of waxed paper. You could use parchment paper if you don't have waxed paper. It just makes the rolling out a lot easier. And you do not have to worry about overworking the crust because there is no gluten to overwork it with. But just a few rolls outwards. And we are going to use the paper from the butter to butter the tart shell or the tart pan. And I'm using a tart pan with a removable bottom, just because it makes it a little easier to serve, but you don't need anything fancy like that. You can also use just a regular old pie plate.
Is the crust delicate?
Kind of, sort of, but not really. It's incredibly forgiving. So as you pick it up, we're going to pick it up now, peel one sheet, and then just kind of gently place it onto the tart shell. And if it tears or breaks, no big deal. We can just patch it right up. And it allows you to do that without getting crumbly or messy or anything like that. So we can just kind of fill in where we want.
I just wanted to feel it to see how it felt.
So it actually feels a lot like it would if it were made with wheat flour. It doesn't have a different quality at all. And I'm reinforcing the sides a little bit with a little bit of extra dough because that'll give it a little more integrity when we pop it out of the tart shell. Okay, so...
Can you hold that up for everybody to see?
Yeah. Did I lie to you? We've got our...
I think that's one of the biggest things, when people talk about making pies or anything like this, they're always, I can't do it, I think everybody could do that. That was really simple and easy, so.
And if you don't have a food processor, you can do the whole thing using two super sharp knives. You just cut the butter across the flour, but it's a little bit more time consuming.
And I noticed you pricked your crust, right?
I did. I pricked the crust so that if it wants to bubble while it's in the oven, it'll not do that. There's a way for the air to escape. Now we're going to line it with a sheet of foil. Now that we've pricked it, we're going to put, our pie weights in there. You can use the expensive ceramic kind, but I like to go the budget route. I'm using chickpeas. You can use raw rice, you can use lentils, you can use beans. Not your super special beans, Steve.
Or the canned ones.
Or the canned ones. Or the canned ones. Just make sure you label your bag if you're going to reuse them, because if you try to cook them after, not so good. And that's it. And we just pop it in the oven, 375 for 15 minutes, and then we will peel the foil off, put it back in the oven for another 5 to 10 minutes, let it dry out, get nice and golden, and we have our pre-baked tart shell. And I went ahead and did that for us so that we don't have to wait for it to bake, and we can move right on to the filling.
I think that everyone, don't, count on other guests being this nice, because, usually everybody has to wait, right, for everything. But Malak was really kind enough to bake everything ahead of time so that we could all enjoy it. Yes, Jan? So, Malak, I have to repeat that because nobody could hear that. So the question is, can this particular recipe that you just showed us be used for making pies as well?
Yes, it's exactly the same recipe. You're going to omit the Parmesan, and you're going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar instead. And
Okay.
probably want to omit the pepper, too.
That's good. So omit the Parmesan, omit the pepper, add 2 tablespoons of sugar, and you can just use that same pie crust. And that recipe, again, is on breadtopia.com in their gluten-free section. Is that right?
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right.
So what's next?
So now we're going to move into the filling, which is, again, super simple, super easy. So we have our pre-baked tart shell. While the the shell is baking is when you would make the filling. So we're going to start with goat cheese. Everything goes in the...
Can you show it to us? Can you show us the pre-baked?
The pre-baked? Sure. So the pre-baked looks like this. Kind of the golden color. It's not brown, so it's not super baked, but it's kind of got that golden color to it. So we just put in our goat cheese. We're going to follow it up with ricotta. I love the flavor of ricotta. You could use cottage cheese in a pinch, but it won't be as rich as with the ricotta.
And you can always use Radiance Dairy ricotta too, because...
If you can get it. If you can get it.
Oh. Okay, well, we'll have to ask Francis about that.
That's my favorite. We're going to put 4 tablespoons of softened butter. So just at room temperature, throw that in bits. And normally I would do 3 egg yolks, but I think I'm going to do 3 eggs, the full eggs, in this particular recipe because there's so many of us and I want it to kind of spread all the way. So.
Oh, you're going to crack those. While you're doing that, let me just tell everybody that we are very fortunate to have this show every first Tuesday at Green Building Supply. So we want to thank them for allowing us to be here. We want to thank everybody's Whole Foods because they contribute all the ingredients every month. And I also want to mention that everybody's has launched a brand new delivery service. Everybody's WholeFoods.com. You can get your food delivered. You can place your order online and get it delivered Monday through Friday between 1 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that makes it even more convenient for those of you who don't want to go and spend an hour and a half in everybody's because you know so many people you can't get away. So there you go.
Okay, so to our butter, ricotta, and goat cheese, we're now adding a 1/4 cup of the all-purpose flour, and we're going to add 3 eggs or 3 egg yolks per the recipe. And lastly, almost. I just chopped some of the herbs from my garden, kind of chopped them roughly. I have some basil, thyme, chives, and a little parsley, and a hint of rosemary. So half of the herbs are going to go in here. We're going to save the other half to sprinkle on top of the tart in a moment. And now, thank you, Steve. We're going to put the top on our food processor, and everything gets blended.
Can you blend too much or not?
You cannot, because again, our flour is a gluten-free flour. We don't have to worry about over-blending. Not that you really could. There isn't enough in there to make a difference. And once it's smooth...
So you blend it until it's smooth.
Blend it until it's smooth, and then you just pour it into the pie crust.
Oh, that's pretty easy.
Pretty darn easy.
And how long is it going to bake?
So we have a little bit of goat cheese that isn't quite homogenized in there. I'm going to run it again, sorry. We're going to bake it about 20-25 minutes, and then we're going to sprinkle the herbs on top, and then we'll bake it another 10 minutes or so.
Beautiful.
So let's try that again.
Are there other recipes on the site that are yours in terms of, other types of tarts, or is this really the main tart that's on there? The savory one, anyway.
I think this might be the only tart that's on there, but we're going to put the blueberry buttermilk tart up there. We'll put maybe an apple pie for the holidays. And you can use the same technique exactly for the pie crust for pretty much anything else, yeah? Okay, so here we go. Into the pie plate.
That looks beautiful.
There we are.
And then are you just going to spread it to the edges? Is that what you're going to do then?
I'm just gonna shake the pie plate, actually, and let it spread itself out. We still have a little lump of goat cheese there, but
That's funny.
someone's going to get lucky. That'll be the prize. Okay, and that's it. We're going to throw it in the oven.
If I'm lucky, I can make sure I claim that piece before anybody else gets it. So, all right, so we're going to find out now how you're going to, all the process is the same for the sweet tart, so it's just a question of changing the ingredients up, obviously.
Right, that's exactly it. Yep, so we talked about the pie crust. We're going to take the Parmesan and the pepper out. We're going to replace that with 2 tablespoons of sugar. The rest is exactly the same. Still use the egg instead of where a wheat recipe would call for ice water. And then pre-baking is going to happen exactly the same way. We line the shell with foil, we put our pie weights in, we pre-bake it.
Okay.
Only if you need to pre-bake it. So obviously for like an apple tart, you would not pre-bake the tart shell.
Okay, and then, I don't know, if you wouldn't mind, would you bring one of those over before you tell us what's in it so that everybody can take a look at how beautiful it is, and then you can tell us how they can make it at home. Look at that. That is absolutely gorgeous.
So this is ridiculously, embarrassingly easy to make. The tart shell is exactly as you saw. And Christy, could I ask you to time the tart, because I didn't set a timer for it?
Yep, we can do it. Well, it's 21 minutes right here. So what time do you want to know? How long?
So we do it 20 minutes?
20 minutes? Okay, 41 minutes. On here if you want to see it.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So the filling is even simpler than what we just did for the herb tart. So once we have pre-baked the tart shell, we're going to sprinkle it with fresh blueberries, and then we're going to blend the filling ingredients, and those are buttermilk, lemon zest, lemon juice, sugar. There's a little melted butter, and all those quantities will be on the website, so you can make those. Let me make sure. A little bit of vanilla, I think.
While you check that, I want to just recommend, it's going to be, you know how we do the recommended products from everybody's, and I'll actually show you. We have, Jan was kind enough to print out the current lineup of all the recommended products that we've picked, and next month there will be another one on there that I can tell you about right now because it can go in here, and that is Clonus Supernatural's buttermilk, because it is so far superior than any other buttermilks you're going to find on the shelf. So highly recommend that Clonus Supernatural buttermilk.
I couldn't agree more. That's what I use for Marmalade Sky baked goods pretty exclusively.
We didn't even talk about that.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. So as we said, buttermilk, egg yolks, sugar, lemon zest, lemon juice, melted butter, vanilla, salt, a little bit of the flour, the gluten-free flour, and then we're just going to blend it in the food processor like we just did. Pour it over the blueberries, throw it in the oven.
Beautiful.
I kid you not. That's all there is to it. That's it.
That is it. You can find Malak sometimes at the Fairfield Farmers Market on Saturdays with her baked goods. You can always find her baked goods at Everybody's, Whole Foods. And her brownies, in case you've never tasted them, are like world. I see people shaking their heads. They're like really super. And it's all gluten-free if you have the need to eat that way or you just enjoy her pastries.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll watch the clock for you, or Christy will tell you. And if you have any more you want to contribute, please come back and we'll be here for another 40 minutes or so. So, all right, can I get the youngest member of our cooking show up here, please? How about that? Yes, this is Ariella Severin, and how? Oh, yes, you're going to step up on there. I took the liberty of starting the. Everything.
It's a little too hot right now, I think.
Okay, so you want me to turn it down? Okay, I'm going to do that. It's down now. So I want to tell everybody, I'm going to show everybody what's in there, okay? I'm just going to kind of show them. Okay, here's what's in this pot, and you can tell them now what it is.
So what's in the pot is coconut oil, low sodium soy sauce, and Dijon mustard. And
Now, I think that there are a couple of important pieces of information here because the coconut oil is not just any kind of coconut oil, right? What do you have to use in terms of the coconut oil? Yeah, I think you have to use refined coconut oil, right?
you have to use refined coconut oil
And the reason is?
so it doesn't smoke.
Right, because otherwise it'll smoke. That's right. And why would you see? I would never use low sodium soy sauce. Why would you do that?
To give it more flavor.
And how come that would give it more flavor?
Probably so you can taste the tofu and everything more.
And probably so you can add more of this so it doesn't get and it won't get as salty, right?
Right. So it could get over salty, but we need a lot of liquid in this, but we don't want it to be over salty.
So how's the temperature now, do you think? It's just bubbling a little bit.
I think it might be good to start putting in the tofu.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you do that. Did you wash your hands already? Yes, you did. Okay. So the tofu is cut into like big squares, right? Or rectangles.
Rectangles.
And we've used Old Capital tofu, which is our tofu of choice because it's really great tofu and it's also made in Iowa City by a former resident of Fairfield, Jake Gratzen, and his company. And so this is about the right thickness. Was it about a quarter of an inch or a little bit more, something like that?
I usually make it thinner, but my mom cuts it this thick.
I see. Okay, so now what are you going to do? Just put it in there, or you want me to do it, or what?
I'll put it in there.
Okay, well, while you put that... Oh, go ahead.
And you just, put down one side and then drop it.
Yeah, because you don't want to get too... Oh, that's right. That's not bad, right? So does it need to be a little hotter?
Maybe you should turn it up a little bit more.
Okay. Now, what are we looking for? What are we going to try to do? Do we want it to brown? How do we want to do it?
Probably make it look brown, but a dark brown, so not just soaked in it, more fried in it, and then afterwards we just do the other side.
Okay, so when it gets nice and golden brown on one side, we're going to turn it over, and you just use a little spatula or whatever to do that?
Yes, and I think I should start hurrying up now.
Okay, you go right ahead. I'm going to ask Francis Thicke to come up and talk to him, and then you can tell me, you can just kind of, push my arm or something when you want to talk some more about whatever you're doing. This is one of your favorite things to make?
It's one of the easiest things to make.
Yeah, that's good, and it's also delicious, right? So that's important.
Right.
And you cut your own stuff at home, and you make a lot of different things, don't you? You and your sister both, right?
Right.
And you each have your own knives and everything. You're very helpful in the kitchen.
Right.
Excellent. So Francis, I think Francis, look, we're using, obviously some of your products have been used today in our kitchen, for example, because we had yogurt, right? Oh, does somebody want to say?
I think maybe you should...
You can say it louder.
It's not really
It needs to be turned up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
It's supposed to be bubbling.
All right, we're going to get it turned up, and then you want me to turn it down at that point?
Maybe a little bit later. Who knows?
Okay, well, you just let me know. I'm standing right here, and you can just give me directions, all right? But I'm going to talk to Francis, and then you can just interrupt me when you need to.
I'll just go like this.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so Radiance Dairy is an organic dairy, local dairy here, and you distribute your products a little bit wider, not just in the local area, but how far away do you go?
Now we're in Iowa City and Coralville at the New Pioneer stores, and we're selling through Des Moines through the Iowa Food Co-op. It's actually a statewide kind of a network online food co-op. They have distribution points mostly around Des Moines.
So, yeah, excuse me one second.
Yes.
It's not hot.
It will get that way because you know why? This is an electric stove, and so it takes a little bit of time. It's not the same as, your stove. See, it's starting to bubble right now, and so we're actually going to have to end up turning it down. But we'll let it get moving, okay? So can you tell everybody a little bit about the dairy in terms of, how many cows you have, how much acreage you have, just give us a little bit of background.
Okay. Well, we milk about 80 to 90 cows, and we have 730 acres now. So we're doing some organic cropping besides just the the dairy part. And the cows, a key thing is that the cows get most of their feed from grazing during the growing season. And so twice a day they get fresh grass. We milk them twice a day. After each milking, they go into a new pasture area. So we have a lot of small pastures, and they keep going in there. So we give them just enough for a meal, basically, for a half a day. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because the way we manage that is kind of like the wild animals, bison grazing, and that built our soils. So if we manage it that way, then we're building our soil. We're making more diversity of the plant population, and we're also making it healthier for the animals. They're in a natural environment, eating a natural diet, and it makes a healthier product because cows on grass have milk that's higher in omega-3 fatty acids, conjugated linoleic acids, and things like beta-carotene. So you can see the milk go kind of golden in the spring when the cows get on pasture. So they're still grazing now, and we had some summer rain, so we have good grass growing. So it's good for the cows right now.
I think it's also important to understand that Francis, even though he's a local fixture, he has a national reputation. He served on the National Organic Standards Board, which is the USDA's governing body in terms of setting organic regulations. And excuse me one second. Yes?
Where do I put this?
Oh, I'll tell you what. We'll put it right. Oh, we'll put it right like there. Thank you, Malak. That's excellent. And now your time is over. Your sentence is up with the National Organic Standards Board, right? No, not that time. You can still stay here. But your sentence is up with the National Organic Standards Board. And I wonder if, what was 2017 or 18 was your last
18.
year?
2018.
And do you want to just maybe give us a little bit of a summary of what the National Organic Standards Board does and your time there? And I know I've read some of your observations after you left that particular board, and it is very interesting, I think, and I think people would find it fascinating.
Well, it's a 15-member citizen board, and it has oversight over the whole USDA organic program. So it's an advisory board to USDA. It's quite complicated, but basically USDA has to follow our advice on some things like what materials are allowed in organic production, what are not allowed. But in recent years, we've been finding USDA overriding the National Organic Standards Board, and we've been seeing more of the influence of big agribusiness. And so hydroponics, for example, is now allowed to be organic. And the original pioneer organic farmers were very much against that because we don't think that's what the law was written to mean. And so that's a problem. And also we see more and more of these large confinement dairy operations and poultry operations being certified organic. And we don't think they're following the letter, they're enforcing the law as well as they should. So we're trying to force the issue and try to get things back to where it should be.
So let's talk a little bit about your operation and why it's an operation that we'll say sets the standard for organic production in the United States.
Well, one thing, for example, the organic standards now have a grazing rule that cows have to get at least 30% of their food from grass during the growing season. Well, we actually are probably at about 70 or 80% or more. And the minimum is 120 days, and we often are like 240 days or so. So we're many times over that. And a lot of dairy farms are like that because it's just kind of a natural way, we think, of doing things. But there's been a tendency now of big confinement kind of dairies, and some evidence is that they're not really grazing as much as they should be. And so that's an issue. And the problem is that there's been a glut of milk, not only conventional but organic, in recent years. And so the CAFO seem to be doing fine, but the small family farms are kind of falling away. And it's in large part because the big confinement dairies have a lot of capital behind them. And so when the downturn comes, they can kind of weather it and hold until it comes back up again. But the small family farms, they have limited capital, and a lot of them are going out of business.
So what is it that makes your operation I'm going to turn this down because I think that it probably should go down a little bit, don't you think? Because it might get a little too hot.
Well, basically, some of them aren't getting enough, and some of them are getting a lot.
Is that right? So we have it centered on the burner. I think maybe, this burner might have been a little bit bigger, but I think it'll be okay. You can probably move it around a bit when you turn it. How's that?
I actually have been moving them around while you've been talking.
Oh, that is so good. I am really glad. I'm glad that somebody's on the ball here. That's all I can say. I'm really, really, really happy about that. So what is it about your model that makes it work?
Well, one thing is that we process on the farm, and we're in a nice little community that people enjoy our products. And back to the ricotta, just a little advice. And we try to we make it once a week on Thursdays, and we try to make just enough to make it through the week and not too much so that it gets old. And so we deliver it on Friday. So that's a key thing to know. It gets delivered to the store on Friday. And so we try to have it all run out by the next Friday. And so sometimes it's a little short. We never know. Somebody comes in and buys a whole lot, and sometimes it's over, so we just try to keep it as close as we can.
Yeah, that is tough with product that has a very limited shelf life. I was, for example, asking about Quark today, which is Milton Creamery, they're about an hour away, and that's their German cream cheese. And I know that the store, they have their own restrictions in terms of they need to keep that product that has a shorter shelf life to the right amount that they're ordering so that they're not stuck with it too. So it's kind of like we're all in between a little bit of rock and a hard place. We want the freshest product, and at the same time, the store wants to make sure that they sell it all. So my suggestion is that you don't buy the Quark so that I have more, and the ricotta, I think that Malak needs more too.
Well, the thing is to remember the schedule. We could make all the ricotta you want, more than enough. But if you remember that it gets delivered by probably by about noon on Friday, and then you can be there first, have the freshest stuff.
There you go. You got it from the source. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the dairy currently. You have several products. You do yogurt, you do milk, you do ricotta, you do a couple of cheeses, and you do paneer. You also do jack. And so what are your plans now as far as expansion of product?
Well, we are looking at doing fresh mozzarella and also an aged Alpine cheese. And as you know, we've been working on the mozzarella for a while, and Steve did a taste testing with us, and we brought in mozzarella from a lot of sources, the best stuff and some of the not so good stuff, and then we brought in ours that we had been working on, and the consensus was that ours tasted pretty good. It's maybe a little more dense than we wanted it to be, and so we're working on it even this week, trying to see if we can get it just the right texture, and so we're hoping to have that available pretty soon. So that'd be something that would be out once a week. Again, we want it to be fresh, and we try to let you know when it comes out. And the other one, the Alpine cheese, will be like aged. And we found out we can make it from raw milk now. So we may have different.
Wait, can we stop there for a second?
Yes.
Really, that is really surprising to me, because I didn't think that you could do that in Iowa.
I didn't either, and I was talking to my inspector, and suddenly he said, yes, they've decided that it's okay, which makes sense because before they said you cannot make cheese from raw milk in Iowa, which is ridiculous because you can go to any store in Iowa and you can buy raw milk cheese made from somewhere else. So they've said it's okay now, but you have to age it at least 60 days. Right. But this Alpine cheese we'd probably age for up to 12 months. And so we may have different levels, like medium and more sharp.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the most fascinating parts of that is what is being used as the coagulating agent.
Well, what we've been using, and I give credit to, we have a new person working for us, Augustine Harless, and he's brought with him the kefir culture. So, and the kefir culture has a whole variety of bacteria, just a whole range of bacteria. And so we use that as a culture. And most of the time when you make cheese, you have specific cultures. You have certain ones. And so this is like a more robust culture. So I think it contributes to the flavor.
Well, one of the things that I couldn't believe, and I've tasted the Alpine cheese, and it's really good, because with hard cheeses in general, rennet is what's used to do the coagulation, and with soft cheeses they use vegetable rennet, a lot of vegetable rennet. Sometimes, in Portugal they'll use thistle, but I didn't even know that it was possible to get a great hard cheese using something other than rennet, and this is like kefir culture, that's amazing.
Well, I think we have to distinguish between the culture and the rennet. The culture is the bacteria that gives it the flavor, and the rennet is what coagulates it. Right. So, so we may need to experiment a little more with the rennets too. Okay,
so I'm glad you clarified that for me. So now I just have to wait and see what actually occurs here. So, okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the some of the different things as far as the dairy industry is concerned. One of the big topics over the last few years has. Excuse me one second.
Yes.
This might take a while.
That's quite all right. We have plenty of time. It's not an issue.
Because I have no idea until this is, because it takes a while for this to be done. Plus, all the heat is not getting dispersed.
Okay, well, we're gonna maybe we'll switch it to this other burner, but give us time for this burner to heat up. And Malak, I want to mention to you that we're almost at the time that you want to get check out your crust. So one of the things that's been discussed quite a bit over the last few years is something that has to do with milk, and it's A1 and A2, two different types of milk. Could you explain that and then tell us a little bit about how that fits into your dairy?
Right. Well, just backing up a little bit, milk has three major components: protein, fat, and lactose, which is milk sugar. Sugar, fat, and protein. And one of the proteins has two variants. It's a casein. And they've been labeled A1 and A2. And some research shows that the A2 variant is more digestible, easy to digest, and healthier. And the A1 variant has been associated with some health issues. And so most milk in this country is about 30% A2 and 70% A1. So it's more of the not so good kind. And that's because most milk comes from the black and white cows, the Holsteins. Jerseys, which we have, they're about half and half. But we can test cows and bulls, and what we've been doing now is, for the last few years, is testing all the bulls that we use, and we've been breeding only bulls that are tested to have only A2, so that their offspring we'll increase that, over time, and someday we hope, within a few generations, cows isn't as long as people generations, but we'll have all A2 milk.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So what about the future of the dairy industry? You kind of gave us a little bit of a peek by saying that small dairies are having issues. I've read quite a lot of articles talking about that. But is there anything to give us kind of like a hope for a brighter future as far as small farms and small dairies are concerned in the States? Or is it just not in the cards?
No, I'm always optimistic. And I think the key thing is we've been hearing more about regenerative agriculture. And so if we farm in ways that actually rebuild our soils, because we've degraded them over the years we've been farming, 150 years. And so the grazing system is one way to really regenerate soils. And so people who are doing that are actually, they're on a good trend. And they're making it work well, I think. And like my brother, for example, in Minnesota, he's farming the farm I grew up on. And he doesn't process his milk on the farm, but he has a grazing dairy, and he has been advising farmers since the 80s on how to graze and so on. And he's very successful. And his key thing, he says, to be successful now, you have to keep your inputs low. And on this kind of a system, a regenerative system, you're regenerating your fertility, and everything is kind of self-sufficient. And so the ones that are in trouble are buying all these inputs, And some of the organic farmers, I think dairy farmers, made the mistake of trying to push for real high production. Because in a grazing system, you don't get as high production. The milk has a better quality, but you don't get the real high production. But some of them have been pushing more grain and so on, and so they've gotten on this treadmill of higher and higher inputs. Mm-hmm. And so we think that you need to kind of come back to the basics and do more of a regenerative kind of sustainable farming. Okay, well, I want to
move to that a little bit, but I'm going to move this to this burner here. I'm going to turn this burner off so you don't have to worry about it. And maybe you want to move your stuff over a little bit, and that way it'll be easy for you to handle. So, right, and that might be a little warm. So I think this might be a little hot too. So do you think I think I'm going to turn this down a little bit now, so that we don't. Okay, so I'm going to turn it to about 5. There we go. That's good. Okay, so yes.
I am adding more soy sauce.
Okay, so that's something that you can just look at, right, and decide if you need to add a little bit more soy sauce to it.
Right.
Okay, and what about mustard? Do you need to add more mustard ever or not?
Not usually. You only have to add those two things at the beginning, and then the rest you just have to add soy sauce maybe.
Is there some proportion, for like a pound of tofu? Do you use like a tablespoon of Dijon mustard or?
No, I just eyeball it.
I like that. Beautiful. Okay. So when we're talking about the dairy industry, there's a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of discussion, of course, about not only what you talk about in terms of the regenerative model, but also about the humane treatment of the animals that are giving us this milk. So let's explore that a little bit, because I know that there's a huge movement in this country, maybe around the world, toward veganism. There's certainly a number of people who are very outspoken in terms of feeling that the whole dairy industry, the meat industry, exploits animals. And because you are a farmer and have been, your family's been farmers, and this is how you make your livelihood, I think it'd be very interesting to get some perspective on that.
Well, you're right. There are some kind of militant vegans, and I don't argue with them, and I don't have any problem with vegans. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'm a vegetarian myself, but I don't try to make other people into vegetarians. But I think that there are some misconceptions, but they make a lot of valid points. A lot of cows spend their whole lives confined, and that's not really, I think, humane, in the sense that it doesn't allow them to express their natural behaviors. When cows are out in pasture, they really like that fresh grass. Sometimes they'll run to get to the grass, and it's their natural diet. And so they're a lot healthier. They live a lot longer in their natural diet. And cows in confinement, they usually get a lot of corn, which makes a lot of milk. So you get high production. But corn makes the stomach acidic for cows. Cows have a rumen, and they're made to digest forage, grass. And so when you put a lot of grain in there, you get a lot of production, but it causes problems like acid stomachs and even like hoof problems and some extended metabolic problems. So they get a lot of milk out of a cow for a few years, and then they kind of burn them out. But cows on grass will last. We've had cows up to 16 years old that we've been milking, and they are healthier. We actually haven't had a veterinarian on the farm for about 3 or 4 years.
So some of the issues, though, that I think it's difficult because there are some things, as you said, there are some valid points. So let's talk a little bit about some of them. So what happens? Do the cows that you have, for example, on Radiance's farm, are they artificially inseminated? What about when they have calves? Are the calves separated? How does that work?
Right. We mostly have natural service. We use bulls that we raise. We do use a little artificial insemination, and that is to bring in genetics from, top genetics that we're looking for, like from grazing herds and so on. So what we'll do is we'll breed some cows artificially, and then we'll, if we get a bull from a good cow, then we'll use that bull to breed the herd. So we have the best of our genetics and the best of genetics we're bringing in. Artificial insemination is not as, it's interesting. When cow breeds a bull, I made a video and put it on Facebook, and because there was a discussion, and it takes about 3 seconds for a bull to breed a cow, and it's not a romantic endeavor. And so there's about as much romance in that as there is in artificial insemination. It's to me, it's not a big issue. It's more psychological. Mm-hmm. Now the issue of separating calves, and we've kind of dealt with that in one way, in that we let the female calves, the heifers, stay with the mothers, and they stay with them for 3 or 4 months. And they nurse, run from the cow, and they run in the herd when they go graze with them and everything, and they kind of learn the whole system. We don't do it with the bulls. We can't save all the bulls, or we'd be overrun with bulls and out of business in a couple of years. We do get a lot of calls from families in the area that are looking for bull calves to raise. Some of them have children that raise them for 4-H projects and so on. But in the end, they probably end up in their freezer. We don't track them or anything. But we save a few bulls for our own breeding. Otherwise, though we don't let the bulls raised by the mother. But the calves are raised by the mother for like 3 or 4 months. And by then, they're drinking all the mother's milk. And they're pretty self-sufficient. And I always say they turn into juvenile delinquents by about that time. Because they won't come when their mothers call. And they run around in gangs. And they get high on grass.
Okay. I'll be right back to you. Just 1 second. How's everything going over here?
Still not ready to flip yet, but they're getting closer.
Okay. So how's the temperature? Is it okay, or do we need to adjust it?
I think it's okay.
Okay, excellent. I'm looking forward to oh, yes.
Since last time they put in soy sauce, I did add a little bit more.
Oh, some more soy sauce even. Oh, great. Okay. That's terrific. Okay, so you just got to watch that. That's something that you want to just and with the low sodium soy sauce, I guess you don't have to worry too much about too much salt in it, right?
Right, but you still have to worry a little.
Oh, you do? Okay. Okay. All right. I hope we don't have to worry too much. So,
At about 3 or 4 months, we wean them, and it's a pretty simple way of weaning them. We have a barn right next to where the cows come home for milking, and so we put them right in there, and the mothers can come home and visit twice a day. You know, I say it's kind of like a kibbutz. You know, they go to work and they come back and they visit their children, and then after a while, they kind of in a few days they basically forget about it. They really, you know, they're off grazing and they're in their own little thing, and then this group that we weaned after a few weeks, we'll put them in their own pasture, and they're you know the teenagers out there grazing.
Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to sort this all out for myself too, because it's a difficult topic, and people have for I guess thousands of years dealt with this because, for example, in India cows are sacred, so you see them running all around the streets, that type of thing. They don't even know what to do with them, and oh, okay, so we may have to go this way, so that's fine, yeah. So it's a beautiful dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, and I understand that, people are concerned about that, and we're kind of just doing what we can do, and, we're not having all the bull calves, we're not saving all the bull calves, but that's, we're trying to be very transparent about it, so we don't try to hoodwink anybody about what we're doing,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I think this smells really good, by the way. Yeah. I can't wait to taste it. That'll be delicious. So let me ask you then, as far as the national organic standards are concerned, do you have any particular thoughts about some of the current political environment and where you see things going with some of the policies that people who are running for president are beginning to discuss in terms of the farm community?
Well, actually, Bernie Sanders had a little line in his ag statement about fixing the organic standards, and so that's a good thing. And so we're hoping that we're always trying to put pressure on the political level. But the problem is that the agribusiness people are kind of camping out at the USDA, administrators' offices and getting a lot of influence there. Mm-hmm. One thing that I've been involved in is that we've created an add-on certification. It's called the Real Organic Project. And basically, we have standards that we think that are on top of the USDA standards that bring it back to where it's supposed to be. For example, no CAFOs, no hydroponics. And so I'm working with that looks pretty good. Yeah. I'm working with a group. We created our own Real Organic Standards Board. We meet once a year, and we created our own standards, and I'm actually chairing that board. And we're now certifying farmers all across the country. We have probably about 150 farms certified. We're hoping to get up to several hundred this year. So the thing is that we're making a little label that we're going to seal, we can put on, so people see that seal, Real Organic Project, and they know that it's the higher level.
Just excuse me one second. Hold on to that, because this is really important information, and I want to make sure. Yes.
This is what it looks like when it's ready to flip.
Oh, perfect. Great. Thank you. I'm so glad that you made sure that I saw and everybody else could see what was going on. So now we know exactly what it should look like. So it's kind of like a little bit, not only is it a little bit brown, but it's also kind of got a little crust on it, right?
Right, and it also looks a little blackish and brown.
Right, and I think that's what's going to give it really a lot of flavor, all that caramelization, right?
Probably.
Probably. Okay, so this is called, that add-on certification is called again?
The Real Organic Project.
Now, will people, will they actually have USDA certification in addition to that? Is that a requirement, or could they just get Real Organic Project?
They have to have USDA certification, because USDA gets the basics. And all of the national list of what's allowed, not allowed, all of that is taken care of by the NOSV and USDA. So what we're doing is tapping on top of that a few key standards: no hydroponics, no CAFOs for chickens, no CAFOs for cows, and a few other things, animal welfare things. And so then our inspectors goes on the farm, and it's pretty quick. You can see pretty easily that it's met the standard. And right now we don't have any labels actually yet in the shelf, but we're getting a lot of farmers going, and so we can get enough mass to make it happen.
Okay, I have one more question about that. Yes.
Well, also when you flip it, you should add some soy sauce to it.
When you flip it, you should add some soy sauce. Okay, great. That looks beautiful. Okay, so what I'm interested in exploring about this is that I think that probably people don't really understand the whys as to, you did mention, CAFOs, that type of thing. But I think that maybe from little bit that I know, this has become necessary because the larger, and you correct me if I'm wrong about this, that the larger agribusinesses have basically tried to, as much as possible, skirt the letter and the intent of some of those national organic standards, and also the inspection process hasn't really been strict enough to essentially, say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's right. And remember is that the organic food is now a $50 billion industry in the U.S. And before, when we were little, the big foodies didn't care. But suddenly now, this is the fastest growing part of the food industry, and they want they want not only a piece of the pie, they want the whole pie. And so they're trying to weaken the standards, and they're trying to get away without full enforcement of some standards. And so that's why a lot of the pioneer farmers, organic farmers, are really pushing hard. We go to the National Organic Standards Board meeting and testify. And we created actually an organic farmers association of organic farmers, and we go to Washington and we lobby just like everybody else,
Right. And I think another thing is that people need to understand that this National Organic Standards Board is really, it's a political board, and it's not just because I can just hear people saying, well, I don't understand. If there's a National Organic Standards Board, why should it be that difficult to make regulations that work and that really, people know and can trust that they're buying organic food?
The reason for that is that the 15-member board is appointed by USDA, and there's a lot of pressure on who gets. Then there are slots. There are like 4 farmers and several consumers and environmentalists, and so all these different categories. And in the past, the farmer slots sometimes were filled by agribusiness people, and so that was always a point of contention. So in the last farm bill, the agribusiness people got the law changed to say that they can also be farmers. And so you can see how the politics work. They're pushing and we're pushing.
Right. Fascinating. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us some insight into that and also into your own operation. And I think that one of the things that it says to me and to all of us is that we have a lot of power, and our power lies in spending money. So if we want to have good food, we just have to put our money really into supporting farmers who are adhering to this kind of standards that we're interested in. And that speaks more than anything, probably.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I want to just ask Malak if she has anything else that she, also there's a woman here who's also part of this whole operation. Susan Thicke is here. And did he just get in the frame too? Okay, John, you are just really, you are the beans. You're in the frame now when you walk by. It's really, we really don't go anywhere. We have to talk, afterwards. Anyway, I just want to say that, thank you also for being a part of that. And we didn't even get to talk about your trip. You guys just got back and saw, some dairy operations in Holland, right, in the Netherlands, and probably other things too. So maybe we can do that on a future show. That'll be great. All right.
So all I did 20 minutes into the baking process with the tart was I sprinkled the remaining herbs on top, and I think we're probably ready to go. I'm going to check it one last time.
You check it. I'm going to run out of the picture for 1 second because I have to bring out these other couple of products really quickly. This is such a professional operation. It's just great. Anyway, the 3 products that I've chosen for everybody's recommendations. This is, I don't think I've ever done a frozen food, have I? I'm not sure, maybe. But Jan Koblingler said to me the other day, she said, you really should try these organic shredded hash browns. And she said, just don't season them because it says right here, seasoned. All right. So I followed her instructions and they were delicious. So if you're in a hurry, I say, go for it. Why not? They didn't talk to me, no, but they were really good. Anyway, and we have the all-purpose flour, of course, we talked about. And if you have a lactose intolerance, this is a great option that you have. Miyoko's cultured vegan butter. This woman is Miyoko Shinner. She has a great story. She makes all kinds of cheeses also. I use the word loosely because that's what they call them. Anyway, but she really has a real commitment to making products that are really high quality and wonderful for people who are lactose intolerant. Thank you all so much. We're here every first Tuesday at Green Building Supply. I want to thank Jason Strong from Fairfield Media Center for all of his help in producing this. And I want to thank, again, Francis Thicke, Malak, Nour, and Ariella Severin for making this wonderful tofu. I'm Steve Boss, and you've been watching Great Taste on Fairfield Media Center's YouTube channel, right? Okay, thanks it.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.